Hello everyone, thank you for joining me today. This is Taliesin McKnight, and today's subject is Astral Magick. Astral Magick is the practice, the occult practice of pulling down and harnessing the spirit of the planets or stars. So Astral Magick involves pulling down and harnessing the powers of the planets and stars and zodiac signs and things like that. So it is a way of using astrology as a form of practical magic. Now, today we will examine what Astral Magick is. We'll talk about how it works, and we'll also talk about how to do it, methodology, how do you do Astral Magick. And so we have a lot of ground to cover today. Astral Magick goes back around 2,000 years ago to ancient Egypt. Now that's quite a statement. Whenever I hear someone say, oh, this goes back 2,000 years ago to ancient Egypt, I'd probably scoff and chuckle a little bit because people come up with all kinds of exaggerated claims. However, we can trace this form of magic, this type of magic, about 2,000 years ago to the Egyptians, because we have the Hermetic text. Hermeticism was a fusion of Greek and Egyptian philosophy and mysticism around 2,000 years ago. We do have the Hermetic texts, which date to around the 2nd and 3rd century. We have the Corpus Hermeticum, and that has a bunch of different books in there. You could read the Asclepius, the Corpus Hermeticum, the fragments. You could find these published on the internet. G.R.S. Mead did a lot of work on Hermeticism. Really cool. So anyways, Hermeticism goes back to ancient Egypt, and we do have writings that go back to around 2nd, 3rd century. And this all goes back to Alexander the Great conquered or liberated Egypt from the Persian Empire. And then you had the Ptolemies. And this was a fusion of Greek and Egyptian religion and mysticism and occult practices. And this is where you get Hermeticism. Hermeticism trickled down through the Middle Ages, and you see the grimoire Picatrix, which deals with astral magic and creating talismans with the different spirits of the deacons and zodiac signs and all of that. And in the year 1463, Marsilio Ficino published a lot of the Hermetic texts. And in 1510, Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa wrote his 3 books of occult philosophy, which passed around in manuscript form until being printed in the year 1533. So, and his work deals a lot with astral magic. So just a brief introduction so you could see that this form of magic, this type of magic, goes back to around the 2nd, 3rd century of Egypt. So about 2,000 years ago in Egypt, and we still have Hermetic writings preserved today. And so this is the Egyptians from late antiquity. And this probably draws on earlier material, so we don't know how far back this goes, but we know it's very old. Now, what is Hermetic magic? I mean, how does it work? How does astral magic work? There is the idea that different herbs, stones, and metals each correspond to a certain planet, zodiac sign, and all of that. If you look at an almanac, you'll see a figure of the human body, and you'll see that Capricorn rules the knees, Scorpio rules the genitals. You'll see that Aries rules the head. So if you look at any farmer's almanac, you'll see that different parts of the body correspond to different zodiac signs. But also, different herbs, stones, metals correspond to different planets and zodiac signs. So in astral magic, you gather up the stones, herbs, metals that correspond to a certain planet, and with this you create a talisman. There is the Hermetic adage, as above, so below. And you hear this a lot in occult circles, as above, so below. Now, what the hell does this mean, and how does it apply to magic? As above, so below. Basically, this means that material things are a reflection of a divine order. So that the passage of the seasons, the phases of the moon, these are all glimpses into the mind of God. But also, this means that different stones and metals and herbs, plants, trees, that these all correspond to different planets, different zodiac signs. So you gather up the materials of a certain planet, and like attracts like. Like attracts like. So if you gather up the metal of Venus, which is copper, and you inscribe symbols of Venus, and you take rose petals or Adam and Eve root or liverwort, whatever, herbs ascribed to Venus, and you put these in oil and rub it on the copper and inscribe symbols of Venus, all of this is taking things that correspond to Venus and making a talisman. So, if you want to make a talisman of Mars, you take the metal of Mars, iron, inscribe symbols of Mars, you take herbs of Mars, and you put all this together to create a talisman. Like attracts like. Now, once you have done this, you have created the body, the material body of the talisman. Now you have to give it life. You have to give it a soul, a spirit. So now you call down, you invoke the spirit of the planet to come inhabit the talisman. So your physical talisman is your body. Now you have to give it life. You have to give it a soul. And this is pulling down the spirit of the planet into the talisman. So you have body, and then you have a soul, and together these make a living thing, a living entity, in a sense. The Asclepius is a Hermetic text that talks about how the ancient Egyptians made statues of their gods, and how they actually called down the gods into their statues. So that's interesting. And the Asclepius talks about how the statues would give oracles, perform miracles, and all of that. Now, whether that is real or just a fable, whatever the case may be, it explains sort of this talismans. You have the body, and now you have to give it life. You have to give it a soul, in a sense. Sort of. You know, you pull down the energy of the planet into the talisman. So the talisman acts as a receptacle, a cup that receives the spirit of the planet. So today, in modern occultism, a lot of people say, oh, it's all just symbolic. It's all just symbols within the mind. So that, oh, I'm making a talisman and this means this to me, and okay, I'm going to carry it in my pocket now, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's cool. That's great. But according to this system, that's half of it. When you make the physical talisman, then you have to call the spirit of the planet into it. And this is pulling the soul down into matter. And you are creating a living thing. Back to the Hermetic axiom. As above, so below. As below, so above. What does this mean in magic? For one thing, it means that different metals, stones, herbs correspond to different planets above. As above, so below. But also, and what you're doing is you're taking like attracts like. So if you take all the things associated with Venus at the proper time, then like attracts like. You could call Venus down into to inhabit the talisman. But also, as above, so below, you are uniting heaven and earth. What a magician does is links heaven and earth. You are uniting body and soul, spirit and matter, heaven and earth. You'll notice that on the magician card in the Rider-Waite tarot deck, he holds a wand up to heaven and he's pointing down. He is pulling energy down from above and channeling that energy down. And so you are connecting heaven and earth through creating different magical links. You are pulling that energy down into the vessel, the cup, the receptacle of the talisman. Now, how do you do this? How do you pull down energy into an object? You do this, of course, with the proper magical correspondences, the proper herbs, stones, metals. And then you simply call it down with ritual invocation. Ritual invocation could just mean calling on it and asking it to come down, prayer, inflame yourself in praying. There are lots of different rituals that could be done to pull the spirit of the star down into the talisman. So yeah. Now, there are lots of other things to consider, since this is basically astrological. For example, it's really important that you have an astrology chart. This is an app that I have on my phone, which is really cool. And this is the current astrological conditions. You need to know where the planets are. So people a lot of times use planetary days and hours, but you need to know where the planets are to work this form of magic. Now, another thing to consider, and I really can't go in depth into this here, but in future videos, I'll go in more depth and detail, and I'll tell you how to make your own talismans. But there are lots of things to consider, which is pretty technical with astrology. For example, certain signs, planets are stronger in certain signs and weaker in others. These are the dignity of the planet. So for example, the sun's domicile is the house that it rules, which is Leo. So the sun in Leo would be a strong influence. But the sun in Aquarius would be weak, because that's that planet's detriment. The sun is exalted in Aries. which is strong, but its fall is in Libra, which is weak. So you have to look at the dignities of the planets, and also you have to consider, is Mars and Saturn anywhere near? Now, if you're doing a ritual just dealing with Mars or Saturn, then yeah, you want that. But if you're doing a love spell, then you're not going to want to have Mars, the planet of war and discord, or Saturn, which is restriction. And you've got to consider things like what is the ascendant and the midheaven. So it can get really technical, and you've got to understand that back in the day, this was a science back then. And this was a form of magic that was for the educated, the elite. So astrological magic involves getting the proper stones, metals, herbs, and putting these together. This is the body. Now you have to infuse it with life. You have to give it a soul. So you're uniting spirit and matter, because like attracts like, and you are uniting heaven and earth. As above, so below. As a magician, you are connecting above and below. You are connecting above and below. Above and below has to do with the correspondences of the planets and different herbs and stones and metals. But as above, so below also has to do with uniting earth and heaven. And this is part of the chemical wedding. This is part of uniting male and female from one level, one perspective, the sun and moon. You are uniting heaven and earth as the magician. And like I said, the magician card often shows someone holding a wand up and pointing down. You are the link between heaven and earth, uniting spirit and body, and you are creating a living thing, sort of like a golem. So that's interesting. Now, this idea that different stones, metals, plants, herbs, that they have occult properties. You have to understand, of course, modern science says that some plants, some herbs relieve pain. Some plants relieve pain, some thin your blood. Some plants make you drowsy if you eat them. Some are poisonous. Some are psychedelic and make you hallucinate. So you see how different plants have different properties. But from this occult perspective, they also have occult virtues. For example, mugwort is believed, to open up psychic ability. So if you rub mugwort on a scrying mirror, it's said to help open you up psychically to see things. Dittany of Crete is an herb that's widely believed to help spirit manifestation when you're doing evocations or summoning spirits. So, different ideas. Now, this idea that different herbs, plants, metals correspond to different occult properties is found in many different systems of magic. It's found within voodoo, Wicca, different forms of ceremonial magic. Santeria is found different forms of folk magic. So, for example, candle magic, same basic concept. If you're doing a love spell, you take a red candle, symbol of the color of love and sex, and you take herbs connected with love, such as Adam and Eve root, things like that, rose petals, and you put it in oil and rub it on the candle. You carve symbols of your desire. This is your body, your matter, in candle magic. And then you push your desire for a new love in your life, the soul, and then you let it burn, which releases the energy. So in candle magic, bath magic, many different systems from around the world, many different types of magic use the same concept, that there are different frequencies and vibrations to different colors, sounds, tones, herbs. And so anyways, this is astral magic, and this is a form of magic that we could trace back to Egypt around 2,000 years ago because of the Hermetic manuscripts. Now, in future videos, I will show you how to make your own talismans. And we're going to get pretty in-depth into magic. And thank you for joining me, and hope to see y'all next time. Thank you for watching, y'all. Have a great day.